Did you say that he talked to China about Greenland and they're in accord with each other? Did you say those words? Or my...
Yeah, he said we talked about Greenland, and we believe that Greenland belongs to that's an issue for the Greenlandic people to decide upon.
Of
Yeah,
course, China would believe that because that is the threat there, China and Russia. Yeah, okay. Here's from Terry
remarkable.
Newman.
It's honestly, the word sellout kind of works. But then again, I'm not here to sort of. I think it would be quite foolish to go to Beijing and try and lecture China, especially if you're the Prime Minister of Canada. I just think that would be demented. That would be a completely foolish thing to do. So I don't necessarily, I'm not objecting in like absolute terms. However, if your party is based on the idea that you believe in human rights and international law and all these sorts of things, and like you're the morally good people in Canada, then then I get a little bit upset about it, because then it's just hypocrisy, isn't it? And it's basically a kind of fraud.
It's like a gaggle of chickens walked into the fox's den and are strutting around like they're going to be okay. I don't know. And that's in CBC going hard to work there. This is Terry Newman. Today's CBC news briefing. CBC repeats Carney's line ironically. Canada has a broader relationship with the U.S., but the Canada relationship with China is more predictable. So they're already working hard to sell this to the Canadian public. I don't know who's watching CBC, though. So we're going to talk about it later, though. We'll talk about it later.
The Liberal Party, they're watching it. Liberal MPs.
And if you want the biggest lie of the bunch there's Tim Hodgson. He's got to be Tim the Touter. Tim the Touter, he's going to get that name. But listen to this tout. You got to love this tout. Like, who believes this one? But let's go, Tim.
Let me be clear. We are here because we share a goal. We share a goal on getting to net zero. We believe we have lots of common interests with respect to how we use clean energy to get there, and we have common interests around how to get there on a conventional basis. And we're going to exploit that for the benefit of Canadian workers and for Canadians.
Well, if you got that BS card, if you got that one handy, you can lay that one down right now. You can play that card right now because, like, I don't know who's buying that. That China is in a race to get to net zero. Come on. That's a tough sell, buddy.
Yeah, well, they're in a race to use it to weaken their opponents. I mean, geopolitical nerds out there will know that China's primary weakness, and it really is, this is its Achilles heel, is that it doesn't have enough fossil fuels within its territory to fuel its economy. It relies on imports. That is its number one weakness. In many ways, that's the reason why it can't supplant the United States. That's one of the few reasons. So for them to go on about how great, non-fossil fuel energy is, there's a little bit of kind of, they're trying to weaken you so that you're as weak as they are. So they turn their weakness into a shared weakness that everybody suffers from. But anyway, you asked earlier about Greenland, and I can actually read the quote to you now, because I've just had a quick look. So he said that he talked to Xi. So he said, I had discussions with President Xi about the situation in Greenland, about sovereignty in the Arctic, about sovereignty of the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark, and I found much alignment of views in that regard. That's verbatim, that's what he said. So, remarkable, isn't it? And especially since today, just now, in the last hour, Donald Trump's come out and said he will consider sanctions on countries that don't agree with the United States' position on the sovereignty of Greenland, i.e. that it's a part of the United States. So, dangerous game. As usual, anything you do with China, especially if you do it behind the Americans' back, very, very dangerous game.
This is the part that puzzles me the most. NATO's real purpose is to make sure it's protected against countries like China and Russia, the two biggest threats that almost everybody can agree with. And here's Canada agreeing that against the Americans and saying that China now agrees with, or Canada now agrees with, or China agrees with Canada that it should be Greenland its own sovereign state. Of course, China would agree with that because it weakens America. That one.
Yeah, obviously, because China can get in there and fiddle and mess around with a population of 58,000 people and get what they want in a way that they couldn't do that if it was the possession of the United States. Clearly, I mean, obviously, who needs Who needs to be instructed in matters of that kind? I mean, other than Melanie Jolie, maybe.
And then the question that nobody's asking is all the conflicts that Mark Carney has with China. And this, I mean, we're going to put this back up here yesterday, just all these headlines and all the stuff that China's, accused of doing here in Canada, including election interference, including backing Mark Carney's election, which, when he was asked that, we won't play the clip again, but when he was asked, he said, well, why did China help you win the election? I don't know. We'll just leave it at that. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that, and so will the press. Don't worry. You're not going to be asked about that again.
Don't worry about that.
Also, Pierre Poilievre has released a statement where he mentions, again, the elephant in the room, the obvious, which none of the media have mentioned, which is the $1 billion given to, the sort of sweetheart loan given to BC Ferries that was then given to the Chinese Communist Party for ferries in BC. Not mentioned. It's left to Pierre Poilievre to say it, and the media, I can almost guarantee you, will not pick that up. That's just gonna dribble away.
Here's a Conservative MP putting this out just to remind, but I mean, they're not asking, there's so many conflicts of interest. Mark Carney literally got a loan from the Bank of China while he met with President Xi in 2024, just not even a year ago, and took over $250 million loan from the Bank of China. And they have massive exposure. Brookfield has massive exposure in a falling real estate market in China. That's likely why he had to take the money from the Bank of China. And then also, they have investments in battery plants there, lots of investments there. And here's this thing. Look at this. This is Mark Carney's unexercised Brookfield options. Nobody asks these questions. Like, Mark Carney's conflicted. Like, I mean, these are the questions should be asked. We just did a deal with EVs. You have battery plants here. You have investments in battery plants. That's odd. You just did a loan with President Xi's bank himself. Like, you were there. So these deals you're doing for Canada, the Greenland comment has got to be the worst comment ever. Like, I mean, that is basically, we rest under the protection of the United States. Are we going to then say we're going to rest under the protection of China? Is that our next step? Because I don't think that's going to fly.
Well, China's going to have to build a navy that can, travel more than a couple of 100 miles off the coast of China. They're going to have to do that first. It's just crackers, isn't it? And as well, like, in comparison to the Chinese, the Americans are, and I don't mean to say this in an absolute sense, because the Americans are cheeky buggers as well in their own way. But the Americans are just so much more generous than the Chinese in terms of the trade and relationship that we've had with them for so long in this country, and with other countries as well. The Americans have been, quite free and easy with a lot of their with access to their markets and so on, and tolerated asymmetrical trading relationships. They've permitted that to occur. The Chinese, on the other hand, are rather parsimonious. It's impossible to imagine us ever really building an economy around trade with China the way that we have with the United States. And that's before you even start to talk about the military. It is, it's a fine line to walk. And I don't suspect that the Liberals and Carney are actually stupid enough or suicidal enough to think that they can do a switcheroo and go to China over the US. I really don't think that they think that, because that's just insane. But it's a fine line to walk, and you've got to be very careful, because you don't want to upset the Americans enough.
Well, I think that
they kind of walk away. You really don't want to do that.
I think the Greenland comment actually definitely stepped over the line.